There is something electrifying about live television that no amount of rehearsal can tame. It's the unpredictability, the rawness, the knowledge that millions of eyes are watching as real human emotion collides with carefully crafted public personas. And on this particular autumn morning, inside the bustling Manhattan studio of The View, that electricity was about to spark into something unforgettable. Katy Perry, pop royalty draped in a powder blue Versace suit that commanded attention without uttering a single word, sat across from Sunny Hostin, the show's legal eagle known for her unflinching questions and courtroom-honed instincts. What began as a routine promotional appearance would quickly unravel into one of the most jaw-dropping moments in daytime television history. But before we dive into the chaos that unfolded, if you love explosive celebrity moments and behind-the-scenes drama that mainstream media won't tell you, you need to hit that subscribe button right now for Prime Talk. We bring you the stories that matter, the confrontations that shake the entertainment world, and the truth behind the headlines. Smash that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and let's get into this absolutely wild story. The morning had started ordinarily enough. Katy Perry was making the rounds, promoting her latest album, a deeply personal collection that marked her artistic rebirth after years of public scrutiny, tabloid fodder, and professional setbacks that would have crushed lesser artists. She'd already sailed through Good Morning America with her trademark charm, deflecting personal questions with practiced ease while delivering perfectly quotable sound bites about empowerment and artistic evolution. The View should have been more of the same, another checkpoint on the promotional circuit, another opportunity to smile, laugh, and remind America why they'd fallen in love with her in the first place. But Sunny Hostin had other plans. As Katy settled into her seat at the iconic table, the studio audience erupted into applause that shook the walls. She waved, that megawatt smile lighting up her face, her confidence palpable even through the television cameras. Sunny welcomed her warmly at first, her questions gentle, focusing on the music, the creative process, the vulnerability Katy had shown in her latest work. Katy was in her element, animated and genuine, discussing how motherhood had changed her perspective, how she'd learned to silence the critics, how she'd rediscovered her voice after feeling lost in the machinery of fame. Then Sunny leaned forward, her expression shifting from cordial to prosecutorial in a heartbeat. "Katy, I want to talk about something you mentioned in a recent interview," Sunny began, her voice carrying that measured tone that trial lawyers perfect over decades in courtrooms. "You spoke about being authentic, about showing your real self to your fans. But there's been considerable criticism about some of your past work, particularly regarding cultural appropriation, the controversial collaboration with Dr. Luke despite the allegations against him, and what some have called performative activism. How do you reconcile calling yourself authentic when many feel you've built a career on borrowing from cultures that aren't yours and supporting problematic figures?" The studio fell silent. That comfortable warmth that had filled the space moments before evaporated instantly, replaced by a tension so thick you could slice it with a knife. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. This wasn't the friendly banter they'd expected. This was an ambush, disguised as journalism. But Katy Perry didn't flinch. Something fascinating happened in that moment, something the cameras captured in exquisite detail. Instead of the defensive posture most celebrities adopt when confronted, instead of the stammering or the pivot to talking points, Katy's expression transformed. The smile didn't vanish entirely, but it changed, hardened at the edges, becoming something more knowing, more dangerous. She took a slow, deliberate sip of water from the mug in front of her, maintaining unwavering eye contact with Sunny the entire time. The pause stretched on for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 5 seconds, though in television time, 5 seconds might as well be 5 hours. "Sunny," Katy finally said, her voice steady and clear, carrying none of the bubbly enthusiasm from moments before. "I appreciate the question, I really do, because it gives me an opportunity to address something that I think is really important in this moment we're living in." She shifted in her chair, her body language opening up, not closing down. This wasn't retreat. This was preparation for battle. "I've spent 15 years in this industry," Katy continued, her words measured but gaining momentum, "and I've made mistakes. Real ones. I've learned, I've grown, I've apologized when I was wrong, and I've done the work, the actual work, not just the Instagram post kind of work, to understand the impact of my choices. But what I find really interesting, Sunny, is this idea that I need to be perfect to be authentic. That because I've stumbled, because I've had to learn lessons publicly that other people get to learn privately, that somehow my entire journey is invalid. Sunny began to interject, but Katy raised her hand, not aggressively, but with enough authority that Sunny actually stopped mid-word. "No, let me finish," Katy said, and there was something in her tone that commanded respect. "You mentioned Dr. Luke, and I want to be very clear about something. The legal complexities of my contractual obligations don't negate my personal feelings or my support for survivors. I've been bound by legal agreements that I can't discuss in detail, but that doesn't mean I don't have a position. It means I've had to navigate an impossible situation in an industry that's designed to trap artists, especially women, in contracts that serve everyone but us." The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. This wasn't the manufactured drama of reality television or the scripted controversy of a publicity stunt. This was real, unfiltered confrontation playing out in real time. Sunny's face had transformed too. The prosecutorial confidence had given way to something else, a realization perhaps that she'd unleashed something she couldn't easily control. But she was a seasoned attorney, trained never to back down from a challenge. "But Katy," Sunny pressed, her voice taking on an edge, "don't you think that your silence, your legal obligations as you call them, send a message to young women that career and contracts matter more than standing up for what's right? That's not authentic. That's calculated." The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled, and for a split second, Katy Perry's eyes flashed with something primal, something that transcended the carefully managed persona of a global superstar. This wasn't just a debate anymore. This was personal. Sunny had crossed a line, questioning not just Katy's professional choices but her fundamental character, her values as a woman, as a mother, as a human being trying to navigate an industry built on exploitation and impossible choices. Katy leaned forward, mirroring Sunny's posture, the space between them crackling with intensity. The powder blue suit that had seemed so elegant moments ago now looked like armor, and Katy wore it like a warrior preparing for combat. "Calculated," Katy repeated, her voice dropping to a lower register that somehow carried more weight than any shout could have. "You want to talk about calculated, Sunny? Let's talk about what's calculated. What's calculated is sitting in a position of privilege, with a law degree and a platform, and using it to tear down other women under the guise of accountability. What's calculated is ambushing a guest during what was supposed to be a conversation about art and music, turning it into a trial where you've already decided I'm guilty." Sunny's jaw tightened, her professional composure cracking just slightly. "I'm asking questions that the public wants answered, Katy. That's my job." "Your job?" Katy shot back, her voice rising now, passion overriding restraint. "Your job is to interrogate women who've survived this industry, who've clawed their way through contracts written by men, negotiated by men, enforced by men. I was 19 years old when I signed my first major deal, Sunny. 19. Do you know what you know about contract law at 19? Do you know what leverage you have when you're a nobody from Santa Barbara with a dream and a dozen labels who've already passed on you?" The audience was riveted, some nodding, others looking uncomfortable, all of them recognizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. This wasn't celebrity deflection. This was raw, unfiltered truth spoken with the kind of conviction that comes from years of swallowing anger, of playing nice, of doing the dance that fame requires. Sunny shifted in her seat, regrouping. She was losing control of the interview and she knew it, but retreat wasn't in her vocabulary. "I understand the industry is complicated, but that doesn't absolve anyone from making ethical choices. You had options, Katy. You always have options." "Options?" Katy laughed, but there was no humor in it, only bitter recognition of how naive that statement was. "You want to know what my options were? Break my contract and get sued into oblivion, destroying any chance I'd ever have of making music again? Watch my career disappear while I spent years in litigation I couldn't afford? Or fulfill my legal obligations while doing everything in my power, within the constraints I was under, to support the people and causes I believe in?" She paused, her eyes glistening now, emotion breaking through the controlled exterior. "I donated millions to women's organizations. I used my platform to amplify voices that needed to be heard. I had private conversations and offered private support in ways I legally could. But because I couldn't make a grand public statement that would satisfy the Twitter mob, I'm the villain? I'm the one lacking authenticity." Sunny opened her mouth to respond, but Katy was on a roll now, years of frustration pouring out in a torrent that couldn't be stopped. "And let's talk about cultural appropriation since you brought it up," Katy continued, her voice steadier now, channeled fury replacing raw emotion. "Yes, I wore my hair in cornrows. Yes, I used imagery from other cultures in my videos and performances. And yes, I was wrong. I've said that. I've apologized for that. I've educated myself about that. But what I won't apologize for is being a young artist who genuinely loved and admired other cultures and expressed that love in ways I didn't fully understand were harmful. She leaned back slightly, her gaze never leaving Sunny's face. The difference between appropriation and appreciation isn't always clear when you're in your 20s, when you're surrounded by stylists and creative directors and label executives all telling you something looks amazing, looks edgy, looks fresh. I take responsibility for not knowing better, but I won't be crucified for not being born woke, Sunny. Growth is supposed to be celebrated, not weaponized. Sunny's expression had shifted from prosecutorial to defensive, a remarkable transformation for someone so practiced in maintaining composure. I'm not weaponizing anything, Katy. I'm holding you accountable. No, Katy said firmly, shaking her head. Accountability is having a real conversation. What you're doing is performing. You're performing moral superiority for an audience, using me as a prop to demonstrate how enlightened and uncompromising you are. But real accountability? Real accountability requires nuance. It requires understanding that people are complex, that situations are complex, that the distance between who we were and who we've become is called growth, not hypocrisy. The studio had become a pressure cooker, the audience barely breathing, production staff frozen at their stations, everyone mesmerized by this battle of wills between two powerful women who refused to back down. Somewhere in the control booth, a producer was probably having a heart attack, torn between cutting to commercial and recognizing that this was the kind of television gold that careers are built on. Sunny tried to regain her footing, her legal training kicking in. So you're saying we shouldn't question public figures? That success gives you immunity from criticism. I'm saying, Katy replied, her voice dropping to something almost intimate, almost vulnerable, that there's a difference between criticism and crucifixion. There's a difference between asking hard questions and setting someone up to fail. You didn't invite me here today to have a conversation, Sunny. You invited me here to take me down, to prove some point about accountability that makes you look good and me look bad. And I'm not going to let that happen. The silence that followed Katy's declaration was deafening, a void filled only by the ambient hum of studio lights and the collective held breath of everyone present. Sunny Hostin sat there, her perfectly composed television persona cracking at the edges, revealing something raw underneath. For a woman who'd spent decades in courtrooms facing down hostile witnesses and delivering closing arguments that could sway juries, this moment of being outmaneuvered on her own turf was clearly unfamiliar territory. But Sunny hadn't built her reputation by backing down, and she wasn't about to start now. That's quite an accusation, Katy, Sunny said, her voice tight with barely controlled frustration. To suggest that I, as a journalist, as someone who's dedicated my career to truth and justice, would ambush a guest is not only unprofessional, it's frankly insulting. Katy tilted her head slightly, a gesture that managed to convey both sympathy and steel. Is it an accusation or an observation? Because from where I'm sitting, Sunny, it feels an awful lot like you came into this conversation with a narrative already written. I was cast as the problematic pop star who needed to be taken down a peg, and you were the crusader for justice who would deliver that reckoning. But here's what you didn't count on. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. I've done the work. I've sat with my mistakes. I've changed. And I'm not going to apologize for my evolution just because it doesn't fit your storyline. The audience shifted, a ripple of reaction moving through the seats. Some were nodding in agreement with Katy, others looking troubled, caught between their respect for Sunny and the undeniable power of what Katy was saying. This wasn't just entertainment anymore. This was a referendum on how we treat public figures, on the nature of forgiveness, on whether growth is possible in an age of permanent digital record. Sunny's hands were clasped tightly on the table now, her knuckles slightly pale. You keep talking about growth, about evolution. But Katy, when exactly did this transformation happen? Because just last year you were still working with people who have deeply problematic histories. Just last year you were still profiting from an image that many people find offensive. So forgive me if I'm skeptical about this narrative of personal growth when the receipts tell a different story. It was a strong counterpunch, the kind of argument that would normally land with devastating effect. But Katy had clearly come prepared for this moment, perhaps not consciously, but in the way that anyone who's been through public trial by fire learns to anticipate the attacks before they come. The receipts, Katy repeated, a slight smile playing at her lips that didn't reach her eyes. You know what I love about that phrase, Sunny. It reduces the complexity of human experience to a transaction. Like we're all just walking balance sheets where every mistake is a permanent debt that can never be paid off. But life isn't accounting. People aren't spreadsheets. And redemption isn't supposed to be impossible. She paused, letting that sink in before continuing, her voice gaining strength with each word. You want to know when my transformation happened? It didn't happen in a single moment. It happened in 1,000 small moments. It happened the first time I sat down with activists who explained to me why my "this is how we do" video was harmful. It happened when I listened, really listened, instead of getting defensive. It happened when I stopped surrounding myself with yes people and started inviting criticism from people I trusted. It happened when I became a mother and thought about the world I want my daughter to grow up in. Sunny leaned forward, sensing an opening. But you still haven't addressed the Dr. Luke issue directly. You're hiding behind legal language and vague references to contracts. If you really support survivors, if you really stand for what's right, why can't you just say it clearly? The frustration that flashed across Katy's face was visceral, the kind of emotion that can't be manufactured or performed. Because I'm literally not legally allowed to. Sunny, do you understand what that means? There are lawyers, right now, who would love nothing more than for me to violate my NDA so they could sue me into silence permanently. There are clauses in contracts I signed years ago that bind me in ways that you, sitting here in your position of freedom, cannot possibly comprehend. Her voice broke slightly, genuine anguish bleeding through. Do you think I like being in this position? Do you think I enjoy having to measure every word, knowing that one slip could mean years of litigation? I have privately supported survivors in every way I legally can. I have had conversations behind closed doors with people who matter, who make decisions, advocating for change. But I can't perform that support publicly in the way you seem to require, and I'm tired of being punished for being trapped in a system that was designed to protect powerful men, not the artists they control. The audience was completely still now, the weight of Katy's words settling over them like a heavy blanket. This wasn't the glossy, sanitized version of the entertainment industry they were used to seeing. This was the ugly truth, the machinery behind the magic, and it was deeply uncomfortable to witness. Sunny's expression had changed, something softening in her eyes even as her posture remained rigid. So you're saying you're a victim too? I'm saying, Katy replied carefully, that this industry victimizes everyone in different ways. I'm not comparing my experience to survivors of assault. I would never do that. But I am saying that the same system that protects abusers also traps artists in contracts that silence us, that force us to make impossible choices between our careers and our consciences. And maybe, just maybe, instead of attacking each other, we should be attacking that system. Sunny sat back, her jaw working as she processed this. For the first time since the confrontation began, she looked uncertain, as if the ground beneath her carefully constructed argument had shifted. That's a convenient deflection, Katy. It's not a deflection, Katy shot back immediately. It's the truth. And the fact that you can't see the difference, that you're so committed to making me the villain that you can't acknowledge the complexity of what I'm telling you, that says everything about why these conversations fail. We'd rather have clear heroes and villains than deal with the messy reality that most of us are just trying to survive systems we didn't create. Tension in the studio had reached its apex, a moment suspended in time where everything hung in the balance. Sunny Hostin sat across from Katy Perry, two formidable women locked in a battle that had transcended the typical celebrity interview format and become something far more significant. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every micro-expression, every breath, every second of this extraordinary confrontation that would be dissected and debated for weeks to come. Sunny took a deep breath, visibly trying to recalibrate. Her media training was kicking in, the awareness that this interview had spiraled far beyond her control evident in the slight tension around her eyes. But there was also something else there now, something that looked almost like grudging respect. You're very articulate in your defense, Katy, Sunny said, her tone shifting slightly, less prosecutorial and more contemplative. But at the end of the day, don't you think that someone with your platform, your resources, your influence, has a responsibility to be louder about these issues? To use that voice even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs you something. Katy's expression shifted too, the defensive armor lowering just slightly. Of course I have a responsibility. I've never denied that. But what you're asking for, Sunny, is martyrdom. You're asking me to destroy myself to prove my authenticity, and I won't do that. I have a daughter who depends on me. I have employees whose livelihoods depend on my career continuing. I have fans who find meaning and joy in my music. And yes, I matter too. My well-being matters. My ability to continue making art matters. She leaned forward, her voice taking on an intensity that was somehow both fierce and vulnerable. I spent years of my life letting other people define my worth. Letting critics, letting the industry, letting social media tell me I wasn't good enough, wasn't political enough, wasn't authentic enough. And you know what that did to me? It nearly destroyed me. I had moments where I didn't want to exist anymore because the weight of everyone's expectations and judgments became unbearable. The admission sent shockwaves through the studio. This level of vulnerability, this raw honesty about mental health and suicidal ideation, was not what anyone had expected from this interview. The audience gasped audibly, some hands flying to mouths, the reality of what fame costs suddenly painfully clear. Sunny's professional facade cracked completely for a moment, genuine concern flashing across her face. "Katy, I didn't mean to." "But you did," Katy interrupted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears that she refused to let fall. "You did mean to. Maybe not consciously, but this whole conversation has been about breaking me down, about proving that I'm not who I say I am. And the tragedy is that you're not alone in that. This is what we do now. We build people up so we can tear them down. We demand perfection and then destroy anyone who claims to have achieved it. We ask for authenticity and then punish people when they show us their real, flawed, complicated selves." The studio was absolutely silent except for Katy's voice, which had taken on a quality that was almost hypnotic in its honesty. "I'm not perfect, Sunny. I never claimed to be. I'm a woman who's made mistakes, who's learning, who's trying to do better while also trying to survive in an industry that chews people up and spits them out. And if that's not good enough for you, if my very real, very hard-won growth isn't sufficient to earn a shred of grace or understanding, then I don't know what else I can offer you." Sunny sat there, her usual confidence completely dismantled. When she spoke, her voice was quieter, almost hesitant. "I think you've made yourself very clear, Katy. And for what it's worth, I hear you. I may not agree with all of it, but I hear you." It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement, a recognition that something significant had transpired between them. Katy nodded slowly, accepting this olive branch for what it was. "I appreciate that," Katy said, her voice softer now, the fight draining out of her. "And I hope people watching understand that this, right here, this is what real conversation looks like. It's uncomfortable. It's messy. We don't agree on everything. But we're talking, we're listening, and maybe, just maybe, we're both leaving this interaction having learned something." The interview wrapped shortly after, the remaining minutes filled with awkward pleasantries and surface-level questions that felt hollow after the intensity of what had come before. When Katy finally stood to leave, the audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted nearly a minute, a clear indication of where their sympathies lay. But the real explosion came after the cameras stopped rolling. Within hours, clips of the confrontation had gone viral across every social media platform. Twitter exploded with hashtags like #TeamKaty and #SunnyWasRight, dividing users into passionate camps. TikTok was flooded with reaction videos, think pieces, and dramatic reenactments. Instagram stories showed celebrities weighing in, some supporting Katy's stance on the impossibility of perfection, others praising Sunny for asking tough questions. The media coverage was relentless. Entertainment Tonight, Access Hollywood, E! News, all dedicated entire segments to analyzing every moment of the exchange. CNN brought in legal experts to discuss the complexities of NDAs and contractual obligations in the entertainment industry. The Atlantic published a 5,000-word essay on cancel culture, accountability, and the impossible standards we set for public figures. The New York Times opinion section ran dueling pieces, one defending Sunny's journalistic approach, another praising Katy's vulnerability and honesty. But perhaps most tellingly, the conversation sparked something bigger than just another celebrity dust-up. It ignited a broader cultural discussion about forgiveness, growth, and whether redemption is possible in the age of permanent digital record. Think tanks held panels. Universities incorporated the interview into media studies curricula. Therapists reported clients bringing up the exchange in sessions, using it as a jumping-off point to discuss their own struggles with perfectionism and public judgment. Katy herself didn't comment further on the interview, letting her words speak for themselves. Sunny, in a follow-up statement days later, acknowledged that the conversation had been intense and important, and expressed hope that it would lead to deeper understanding about the complexities of accountability. "Now it's your turn. What do you think about this explosive confrontation? Was Sunny right to push Katy on these difficult issues? Or did she cross a line? Does Katy deserve grace for her growth? Or should she be held to a higher standard given her platform? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because we want to hear from you. And if you loved this deep dive into one of the most dramatic celebrity moments of the year, make sure you subscribe to Prime Talk for more explosive stories, shocking revelations, and the truth behind the headlines that mainstream media won't tell you. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another incredible story. Until next time, this has been Prime Talk, where we bring you the drama, the truth, and everything in between.